Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Jennifer Jones is an author and writing coach. She's found that networking has been really good for clarifying her message and finding out what it is people actually want from her business. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today, Jennifer.
Thank you for inviting me, Liz.
Now, you're an author and a writing coach, which we'll dig into in a minute, but I want to know a bit about your background first. Have you always wanted to write?
I have always read a lot. My first degree is actually in music, but I was going to, in the States, you can do something called double major. I was going to double major in music and English, and then I decided I wanted a whole degree in English. So I have 2 degrees, or 2 bachelor's degrees, and that's where the writing started. I did my PhD in English mostly to get people to pay me to read and write all day. That's what I do now.
Perfect. So when you were at school, did you have any ambitions for what you wanted to be when you grew up? Did you want to be a writer?
I wanted to be a professional musician. I've known since I was 10 that I was going to get a PhD in something, because it really annoyed me that women's titles were attached to their relationship to men. So you can get around that. You can be doctor.
Yes.
So I didn't know then what I wanted the PhD to be in. I just knew I was going to be Dr. Jones at some point.
Oh, that's wonderful. Tell me a bit about the music. What is it that you play? And do you still play?
I play the flute. I don't play it as much now as I would like. I am currently teaching myself to play the penny whistle.
Oh, cool.
That's easier to travel with.
Yes.
If you break your 20-pound penny whistle, you're a lot less upset than if you break your professional grade flute.
Absolutely.
So,
well, my son plays the tuba, which is really not easy to travel with at all.
no, and I always, whenever I traveled with my with orchestras when I was in high school, I always felt so sorry for the ones who couldn't just take their instrument in their carry-on.
Absolutely.
So it's like just watching them toss them around must be just soul destroying.
Yeah, for sure. So you are a published author. So tell me about books that you've written yourself.
So far my books have had to do with writing, all 3 of them. The first and the third are to help experts get their books out. It doesn't need to take as long as people imagine. Writing your first draft, if you're writing about what you do in your business, I mostly work with business owners, should only take you about 40 hours. It does not need to take you 3 or 4 years. So that's the first and the third, that's what they do. The first one starts from the idea that you want to write a book. The third one is helping people repurpose existing material. So if you've got a coaching course or something that could be a book, that helps you repurpose that. The middle one is a weird one that I wrote for Bookboon, which is an online library that's used for it. The part of their library I wrote that for was for their C-suite types, for their continuing professional development. From that I learned I don't like writing to that audience.
Right.
But that tiny little book, because it's only, like 8,000 words. That tiny little book makes more than the other 2 because of the royalty structure they have.
Yeah.
So it was worth doing. I just didn't enjoy it.
So tell me about your experience of getting published. Was that easy to do?
Well, the self-publishing, there's no gatekeeper to get through. For business books, I think they do need to be self-published. If you're writing for the people you want to work with, you need control over the book.
Yeah.
When you publish traditionally, you have to write the book the publisher thinks they can sell to their clients. Their clients may not be the people you want to work with.
Yes.
So you do end up with an entirely different book than you thought you were going to write. My next book will be traditionally published, but it will be looking at how the Victorians responded to the introduction of anesthesia. So
That's fascinating. Why that particular subject? What drew you to that?
that would have been my next academic project if I stayed in academia. Publishing it not in the academic press, so for a general readership, means I get to focus on all of the weird and wonderful stories and not so much on the theory that just bores people to tears. So what drew me to that was thumbing through copies of the Strand magazine. My husband and I both are trained in Victorian literature and culture, and we own all of the 19th century numbers of the Strand magazine.
Right.
And that's where Sherlock Holmes first appeared. That's what it's most famous for.
Yeah.
They've got articles in there on how to make chloroform. And that just sort of blew my mind. And then I started reading through, and it turns up in some weird ways in fiction in that magazine. And then I started looking at other periodicals. And the interest, we can't imagine now, most of us having surgery without anesthesia.
No.
But a lot of people refused the anesthesia. They thought the pain kept them alive. And others, as humans tend to do, used it recreationally. So it's a varied history.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So when will that be published?
I haven't written it yet. I'll be starting a Substack soon, which will be working toward writing the book. But to publish traditionally, that's the other thing. It takes ages because you first have to find an agent.
Yes.
To get an agent to sign you, you have to have an established audience.
Yeah.
So you have to start your audience building before you write the book. So it's a completely different process. I imagine it will take, I should hopefully have an agent by maybe 2027. But then it'll probably be another year before the agent finds me a publisher, and another year after that before I finish the book, and another year after that before they publish it.
Yeah, very long process then.
So you don't want to do that with a business book.
No.
That's why I coach my clients to self-publish their business books, because you could start your book today and have it out before Christmas.
Yeah.
Comfortably.
Yeah. So what was it that made you decide to coach people in how to write their books?
I've been teaching writing since I trained that was part of my PhD, was training to teach writing, and that was in 2001. When I left academia, I set up as an editor.
Yeah.
I do still take in some editing work, but I missed working with the writers. Also, whenever you become self-employed, you start going to networking meetings. And people would be complaining they didn't know what to write for their newsletter, or it was too hard to write a blog post, and they weren't smart enough to write a blog post. And I was thinking, you just spent 15 minutes telling me what you do. Why can you not write a blog post about that? And then I realized it's because they at school were taught to write the hard way, which is for exams, where your first draft has to be your final draft, and that complicates everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be that hard, so that's what I show my clients.
Right. And who are your clients? Do you work with a particular niche, or do you work with anybody?
My approach works best with service-based businesses. I don't recall ever working with a product-based business. That may just be the circles that I am in. But since I usually start with how do you help your clients, service-based businesses will have an answer to that immediately. Product-based businesses, you first have to help them see how their product helps the client.
Yeah.
So it's an extra little step. But beyond the broad umbrella of service-based, it's varied. I've worked with accountants. I've worked with confidence coaches, everything in between.
Yeah. And how do you help them? Do you work with them one-to-one? Do you run workshops for larger numbers of people? How does it work?
Both. I have a blogging club which helps people with their shorter form content. It's not just the blog. We focus on how to take one blog post and turn that into all of your content for the month.
Yeah.
Because if you're writing more than one blog post a month, you're probably working too hard. And then I also have a group program for getting your book out. The program runs for 6 months. You have access to the recorded lessons as long as you need them. But if you're focused on it and you've got about 5 hours a week to begin with, and then your time commitment drops off massively after the 8th week, you can get your book out in 6 months.
And so how many people would be going through that process with you right now?
The book side has been quiet because I haven't been talking about it. That's what will happen. I focused mostly on short form content for the last few years because I've had family illnesses to deal with and just didn't have the headspace to think about a project as big as a book, even if it's somebody else's book.
Yeah.
So I am getting back to looking at growing the book side again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll take time, but it'll get there.
So what is so great about having your own book? Why might people want to write their own book?
It establishes your credibility. If you can put author in, your little byline on LinkedIn or in your bio whenever you apply to speak at a conference, that people assume you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Especially for getting on bigger stages, so giving keynotes at conferences. If you've written a book, whoever's booking the talent for the stage doesn't have to worry about, is she going to have enough to say to fill 45 minutes? And is it going to make any sense? It's really a credibility boost. That's the most visible thing. It also helps build your credibility for yourself. I have been teaching since 2001. It's a little over a year ago now, did some workshops for academic staff at a university. Okay, I taught in universities for a long time, but that was always for the students.
Yeah.
And I'm walking over to the first workshop and I'm thinking, what are you doing? You can't coach a senior lecturer to do anything. And then I was like, no, you've written 3 books about this. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it does help short circuit that sort of negative internal self-talk that we all have. We all have those moments.
Yes. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you've read or if you've led one workshop or hundreds, you're still, if you're faced with a new audience or a new situation, you're going to have that little wobble. And reminding yourself, no, I've got the book, and I actually had the book in my hand. I can do this.
Yeah. So can you tell me about some of the books that you've helped to get out there? What kind of topics are they on?
They have mostly been business coach based ones. So business coaches helping other business owners get their business off the ground and out. The one that sort of veers away from that was by a confidence coach, and hers is part biography and part sort of coaching the reader and building their confidence, because she starts by, because people will meet her and they'll assume that she's always been very confident.
Yeah.
And she hasn't. She had a really rough childhood with sexual abuse and parental neglect. And she talks about how she pulled herself out of that and what tools she still uses, because, if you come from that sort of background, you're going to have wobbles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also how she helps her clients overcome whatever issues they're having. So it doesn't have to be just a straight how-to. The business coaching books tend to be more how-to. First you do this, then you do that. You can build your story into it the way the confidence coach did.
Yeah. And so do you know what kind of results people are getting once they've published their own book? Have they come back to you and told you how well it's done for them?
They have got more exposure. The confidence coach especially, because she's really pushed it. Writing your book is not a magic bullet. It's not sort of, I've done that now, people are going to come flooding into my...
Yeah.
That's not how it works. You have to keep reminding people you wrote the book. You have to... And so she's done a really good job of promoting the book and herself. And she gets, interviews from media. She had a story in The Guardian recently, just before Christmas. So it does help raise the profile if the author puts in the work to raise the profile.
Yeah.
Some of the others have just, they wrote the book, it was done, it helped initially while they remembered to talk about it, and then they've forgotten. But part of the problem with that was they finished their books during the pandemic. And that's completely different energy going into it and coming out of it. So
Yeah.
but the nice thing about a book is whenever they decide they want to pick it up and start promoting it again, all of what they wrote is still relevant.
Yes.
So you can relaunch it.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Absolutely. So let's have a little chat about networking now. You have already mentioned networking already. So obviously it's something that you do for your business, but why? What do you get from it?
Just meeting lots of different people and hearing their takes on whenever they hear what I do and finding out what it is they think I do. The number that they will hear me say writing coach, they will hear me say I help people write, and they'll say, oh, so I can just give you an idea and you'll write my book? No, I didn't say I was a ghostwriter. So it does, networking is really good for clarifying your message, because then you can find out where are people mishearing what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I have, in the last year, I've had fewer people think I'm a copywriter or a ghostwriter, so that message is clearly getting better. I think all business owners can, just from conversations with a variety of different people, start to pick up on what is it that people actually need from me. Because we'll have ideas about what we want to do, but that doesn't mean people are going to necessarily want to come buy that thing.
Yeah.
It was through networking that I developed my quarterly planning workshops, because some people need my blogging club. Some people just need a sort of regular reminder that you need to plan the stuff and do it.
Yeah.
So the quarterly planning workshops were always part of the blogging club, but now you can get them separately.
Yeah.
So I think networking is a good way of getting a reality check for your business.
Yeah.
But it also gives you the support that you would get from seeing people in the office every day. And we don't have that as self-employed people. And yeah, building those relationships and the social side is really important too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're like me. You work by yourself all day, every day, I should think. So it is nice to get out and meet other people, isn't it?
Yes.
So what kind of networking do you like to do? Do you do in-person networking, online, and where do you go?
I do both. I prefer the online. The in-person networking that I go to most consistently is in Hampshire, and it's called the Big Networking Extravaganza. The meetings are fairly relaxed. You're just talking in small groups, and then periodically the host shouts and tells people to move to different tables so you get to meet everybody.
Yeah.
And that is fun, but it's also noisy and chaotic.
Yeah.
And I don't drive in the UK, so I'm limited in which ones I can get to, because I'm not willing to spend some of the locations for the in-person stuff. You've got to get a train and 2 buses and walk half a mile down a country lane. I'm not going to do that. Online networking, my main one is Only, and they're brilliant. You get the sort of what you'd expect networking meetings to be once a month, but then you get all of the other things. Most of my business from Only comes from the people who get to know me in their Page and Screen Club, which is a book and film club.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to find the group that works for you,
Yes.
but finding one that isn't just 30-second pitches.
Yeah.
I briefly was in a group that all it was 90 minutes a week of 30-second pitches.
Oh.
No.
That sounds
Some people
quite hard
loved
work.
It was. But some people loved it. So you do need to shop around and find the ones that work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Horses for courses, isn't it? Some things suit people better than others. So my final question then, Jennifer, if people want to know more about you or perhaps work with you, what is the best place for them to find you?
Either on LinkedIn, I am Jennifer EWC, If you just search for Jennifer Jones on LinkedIn, you're going to get a lot of us.
Yeah.
I finished high school with 5 Jennifer Joneses.
Oh, wow.
We are legion. Or my website, which is ewc.coach. And that has a contact page and all the information you need.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for being my guest, and the best of luck with you writing your book. Let me know when it's published, because it sounds like it's going to be fascinating.
Thank you, I will.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.